This podcast is brought to you by AutoVision and its new AI assistant, Avery. Avery delivers data-driven appraisals, pricing, and detailed strategies for every vehicle. Visit autovision.com to learn more about Avery, where precision meets profit.
Welcome to this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive for the third week in May 2025. I'm Jamie Butters, executive editor of Automotive News in Detroit.
And I'm Kellen Walker in Las Vegas. We're breaking down some of the biggest stories in the auto industry from the past week and looking forward to what's in store in the days ahead. Today on the show, our own Hannah Lutz and Lindsay VanHulle join the show to preview Automotive News 100 Leading Women Awards Gala and Conference.
Mentorship is kind of catered to entry level, but how do we continue that through mid-level and even high level, creating cultures of mentorship within companies and making this a long-term impact rather than something you kind of do on the side.
That's coming up in a few minutes. But first, Jamie, how you doing?
I'm hanging in there, Kel. How about you?
Doing all right. You ready to get into some news?
Let's do it.
What are the implications of the 90-day tariff reductions for U.S. and China trade relations? And will this bring some relief for the auto industry?
You know, it's a good sign in terms of the relations. It kind of shows that they're talking, that there's at least a desire to have some possibility of some trade between these two giant economies. You know, for the auto industry, a 90-day pause is nothing you can plan around. But for especially parts, components, maybe some minerals that you can't get hardly anywhere else. I would imagine a huge rush of orders, try to get as much, here into the U.S. as they can during this 90-day pause. Hope that it continues out and that it is a sign of the administration moving toward a lower tariff environment overall for the industry, for global trade. A lot of concerns, of course, about the costs that the industry is facing with all these import taxes on parts, on cars, on steel and aluminum, and so many other things. But it's also the widespread tariffs that really risk bringing the whole economy down and sending us into a recession, perhaps a deep recession with high inflation and low economic growth. So if we can bring those tariffs down, it reduces the chance of the worst economic outcomes.
Good point. And U.S. House Republicans seek to end EV tax credits. How might this proposal affect the competition between the U.S. and China in the EV market? And how have previous EV tax credits influenced consumer behavior and market trends?
EV tax credits are hugely important. At $7,500, right? That's a really significant incentive. Usually a big incentive from an automaker is in that sort of $3,000 to $4,000 range. So this is twice as much just from the feds. If the state or the companies throw in some, it really brings down prices, makes them much more attractive, and encourages people to take a chance on an EV. Like you said, what's interesting is the comparison with China. Right? In the short term, the automakers make a lot more money on gasoline burning vehicles than they do on battery cars. So that's going to be where they prioritize their efforts. And that makes sense and it's helpful in the short run. But if we go through a period, if we take away the tax credits, the companies are going to invest less in EVs. And the problem is that in 3 to 5 years, they're just going to be that much further behind China, and which has gotten so efficient at making EVs. And yes, they get government support and they get help, but they also are really getting very efficient at how they make these EVs. And you really don't want to see Ford and GM and Stellantis get that much farther behind the Chinese standard bearers, and for that matter, Tesla.
And finally, speaking of Tesla, Tesla's board is reportedly considering a new pay deal for Elon Musk. How might the new compensation package impact Tesla's stock price? And do you think this will bring back some of that shareholder trust to the brand?
Yeah, we'll see. They're trying to clean up the mess from the last pay package for Musk, really huge stock option package that led to multiple lawsuits and has been tied up in court. If they can work out a deal that gives him enough stock options, enough compensation to stay focused on Tesla, to prioritize it above Twitter, above SpaceX, above Doge, and the political things that he's gotten into lately, That's the real win for Tesla. That's what they're trying to achieve. They want to keep him fully engaged in Tesla. If you're the Tesla board, that's your job, is try to keep him focused on Tesla, keep it growing, keep the excitement around the company, because that's a big part of how Tesla operates. People getting excited about the future technology that's coming, whether it's AI or humanoid robots and cyber cabs and robo-taxis. So if they can keep him, really engaged at Tesla, that should help the stock.
Good stuff, Jamie. Coming up, our own Lindsay VanHulle and Hannah Lutz preview the upcoming Automotive News 100 Leading Women Awards Gala and Conference. That's next on Weekend Drive.
Just when you think you've priced a vehicle perfectly to sell fast, the market changes and potential profit slips through your fingers. After all the work of scouring auction sites, tracking competitor rates, and analyzing market trends, the loss of time and money leaves you frustrated. Meet Avery, your AI assistant from AutoVision. Avery revolutionizes how you acquire, price, and sell vehicles by analyzing every detail, from retail values to market trends. And the best part? Avery doesn't just give you numbers, it explains every recommendation, so you know everything that was factored in. Picture this: faster appraisals, smarter stocking decisions, and more profitable sales, all without the exhausting legwork. With Avery, you don't just stay competitive, you lead the pack. Ready to see Avery in action? Visit autovision.com.
Welcome back to Weekend Drive. I'm Jamie Butters with Kellen Walker. Every 5 years, Automotive News spotlights the remarkable women shaping the future of the automotive industry. On Monday, we'll honor these top executives at our Automotive News 100 Leading Women Awards Gala in Dearborn, Michigan. Then on Tuesday, attendees will learn about the power of intergenerational mentorship, the importance of well-being, and other topics at the Leading Women Conference. Our own Lindsay VanHulle and Hannah Lutz will be moderating panels and keynote interviews at the event, and they join me now to talk about what we can expect to see and hear next week. Hannah Lutz and Lindsay VanHulle, welcome back to Weekend Drive.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me.
Hi, Jamie. Second time this week. It's been fun.
Yeah, you're getting to be a regular. So we have a big week coming up. Every 5 years since 2000, Automotive News selects 100 leading women in the North American auto industry. We get nominations from all throughout the industry. This is one of the few awards or honorifics that really cuts across, retail and automakers, suppliers, tech companies, just everybody in the industry. It's so many talented women. It's really challenging. The three of us were among the judges. We worked with some other colleagues inside and out of Automotive News. We spent hours and days judging and debating and looking at the track records of these women and the people who supported them. So finally, here's the big week. We've got Monday night is the Leading Women Gala. It's a fancy dinner. We'll have speakers including Ola BC Boyle from Hyundai and Marianne Johnson from Cox Automotive. Tuesday, we have an all-day conference, some really good discussions. We always have really interesting discussions at even the off years. Really excited. This is our first time to have a full Leading Women conference in 10 years because last time was during the pandemic. It was all online. So really exciting. Hannah, you conducted a roundtable interview back in earlier this year that ran in March. What were some of the themes that women are talking about and thinking about here in 2025?
Yeah, we had a group, I think it was 8 women who joined us here in Detroit. And there were a few themes that emerged. Lindsay can speak to them too. She was watching the panel and covering it. The one that really jumped out at me, and this is something we heard in our Leading Women interviews also, is that they're all about like lifting each other up. It's almost like the walls of competition came down in a way in the roundtable. And it seems like within the teams that the women lead, they all talked about bringing up the key people on their team and getting them into the next role that would help them succeed throughout their career. There was a lot of, professional and career focus in that way, but also a personal focus. Like it seems like they really get to know their people and that informs their moves and their decisions.
And that's interesting because, it's certainly reflected, I think, in how they define success. And that was one of the things that I heard is success to me is when I can see the people that I've mentored or that I've advocated for now taking my spot, and like a lot of them said in 5 years, I would hope that the women that I mentored and that I advocated for are on this list. And I think that's a really powerful statement, just the work that is done inside and outside, formally, informally, to really help identify the next generation of talent, but then also, coach them and guide them and put them in the positions where they'll be able to succeed.
Some of these women that I've gotten to know over the years, I know are, really committed to that, just, decade after decade. Olabisi Boyle, I know, has a number of people that she mentors. She's brought them to our events to help give them a broader purview as to what the industry is like and what, someone experiences when they're at a higher level, like where she is. And I know Judy Wheeler has done a lot of programs within Nissan and personally, acting as a mentor for people. And it's just such, like you said, it's a common theme. I think not everybody is as committed as others. Of course, different people have different strengths, but some of these women, that's part of what makes them such good leaders, is looking out for other people and trying to help lift them up.
Yeah, definitely. And we saw that, in our conversations and even in the submissions. We talked about, we were all judges on the selection committee, and some of the people who were on the list in years past that probably would have been on the list this year chose not to apply or not to submit into their nomination because they wanted other people in their company to have the opportunity.
So Hannah, thinking about this, mentorship thing, you're actually leading a panel on that topic with a number of executives around the industry. What have they told you, or things that they think are really important that they want to share with the audience?
Yeah, some things we'll be discussing, like bridging the gap between the institutional knowledge that the industry needs and thrives on, and then also innovative thinking because the industry is changing so quickly. We'll also talk about communication styles. There's, different styles between generations and between different types of people. Talking about how to help mid-level professionals. I think a lot of the time mentorship is kind of catered to entry level, but how do we continue that through mid-level and even high level, creating cultures of mentorship within companies and, really, really motivating people and making this a long-term impact rather than something you kind of do on the side.
Yeah, it's so interesting because you're right? People need different coaching. They need different mentorship when they're an entry level employee than when they're a first time manager to when they're a first time middle manager. And even as they move into executive ranks, they're still learning because the expectations of them continue to evolve. Sometimes along those ways, people face a lot of challenges trying to live their lives and live their careers. Lindsay, you're moderating a panel on well-being. I think some people call it work-life balance. Some people think that that's a dangerous concept to put out as if it's really achievable. Everybody struggles in some ways with that. But what do you think people are going to want to talk about on that front? And how do they stay, to obviously some extent, things like mentorship help people feel like there's meaning to what they're doing at work and outside of work.
Yeah. And I think it's important to sort of recognize, even since 5 years ago, the shift that work in general has had. 5 years ago, the world shut down. We all shifted remotely. There was a lot of work that was done outside of the office. And since then, there have been, a lot of, I think, progress made on remote work and tools, communication tools and workflows that really enable that. And there are a lot of people who said, that provides flexibility, to be able to do the things that I need to do if my kid is sick or I have to leave in the middle of the day to pick them up. But there's also been efforts to return to the office and trying to figure out how to navigate all of that in sort of this new landscape. And I think one of the things that I really want to do when I open my panel is just sort of level set, right? Where are we and how are people feeling today? And use that as sort of the foundation and the baseline of where we go. And I think what came up, especially in the roundtable from earlier this year, was this idea of balance is sort of a difficult thing to achieve. It's like you can hold work and life equally at the same time. And, there's a lot of discussion about, is it more chemistry? Is it more integration? Is it more, how do you, recognize that there's going to be trade-offs, that, sometimes work might have more needs, and sometimes, your family might have more needs. And there's this recognition, I think, from some of the women on our list who just said, we can't be great at everything. And so how do we then try and prioritize what we need, but also ask for help? And that can be challenging.
One of the things that comes up and can really throw off a family's balance and rhythm is when one of the parents, one of the adults, someone takes an international assignment. These can be, really important opportunities in a career. Companies like GM in particular, I think, used to always use the international assignments, for their high potential, future leaders, and try to, give them a broader view of the world, but also challenge them and test them to see, can they manage? Have the women that you've talked to, is that something that's come up with them?
Yeah, Judy Wheeler, who you mentioned from Nissan, she in particular during the roundtable mentioned that. And she said she really encourages her team members to take an international assignment. It's really career changing and life changing for them. And there is a lot of hesitation from some, and it makes sense, but she really encourages them to think about the benefits and really to set fear aside. And it's benefited her team.
Set fear aside. Always good advice if you can do it. Lindsay, did you have a thought on that?
Yeah, some of the women I talked to brought up some of their international assignments and said, it was something that I, had to make. It's a big risk, right? To move your family and to kind of take on this assignment. And some of them talked about what that did for their career, but also for their family, for their personal networks too, that they were able to, give their kids an experience in another country and what it's like to live outside of the US, and then to come back, having more of that kind of international experience, but also their personal network has grown, and the people that they know and the people that they can kind of include in their circle has also expanded. And there's this discussion of like, it's a risk, but it's a risk that ultimately pays off.
Yeah, risk taking was definitely a big theme beyond international assignments. Really, any assignment is a risk. And the women on the panel and throughout our interviews talked about some nerves they had when they jumped into a new assignment or were asked to take on a new assignment where they felt like they didn't have all the skills required. And it was interesting to hear about how they moved forward with that and really succeeded and leaned on the technical expertise of their team and then relying on their own leadership expertise.
That's a really great point, Hannah. And some of the women, one of the questions we've asked everybody as part of the interviews was, what's the most important risk you took in your career? And a few of the women I talked to pointed out that exact point, Hannah, which was, I was put in an assignment and I didn't know why I was chosen. I don't have a background in that particular field. I'm not the subject matter expert. And they in reflecting back, they were able to notice, well, they didn't put me in that role to be the subject matter expert. There's a whole team of people who have subject matter expertise. They put me in that role because I know how to motivate teams. I know how to ask questions. I know how to, get results. And it's putting people there who can make those decisions and realizing later that was the ultimate point. And saying yes to those opportunities opened up doors that maybe they hadn't seen coming.
Of course, a lot of talk about, sort of personal development and skills development and development of other people around you. But, these women have businesses to run as well. Lindsay, you're going to do a fireside chat, I believe, with Chris Fuel from Stellantis. And she's leading two brands, and they're both a little bit challenged. But I think you're going to talk to her about some of the challenges and also the opportunities that come with this kind of a role.
Yeah, certainly there's opportunities to talk about leadership, and that's certainly going to be part of the conversation. But there's also two brands that are really kind of being repositioned in North America right now. Chrysler being an example of that, and really talking with her about what that blank slate opportunity looks like, and really how to get North American consumers excited about the products that Chrysler is going to be bringing forward. So my hope is to be able to integrate a lot of the leadership questions, but also some kind of forward-looking business questions too.
Yeah, well, and don't forget to ask her about Alfa Romeo, because those are very pretty cars.
It's on the list.
Great. Hannah Lutz is deputy editor of the Tech and Innovation team. Lindsay VanHulle covers General Motors. Thank you both for joining me today.
Thanks, Jamie.
Thanks.
You still have time to get tickets to attend the Leading Women Gala and Conference. You can find that info at autonews.com/events. That's all for this weekend drive edition of Daily Drive. I'm Jamie Butters.
And I'm Kellen Walker. Thanks to Automotive News executive producer Jake Neer for his help on today's podcast. You can get the latest news on women in leadership, tariffs, and everything happening in the auto industry at autonews.com.
Come back on Monday for a conversation with Grayson Brolte, CEO of the Road to Autonomy, about all of the latest automated driving news from the past week.
To me, it seems that they need to go hire a crisis manager, something. Whoever is leading this communications needs to go back to school.
We'd love to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the show and the topics we covered today. Send us an email at dailydrive@autonews.com or leave us a voicemail at 313-444-2774. If you enjoy the podcast, remember to like, leave a review, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.